views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Last week, we talked to city council members to talk about all the things going on in the city council. This week, we travel up to Albany and visit with two Bronx Assembly members to talk about rebounding from the pandemic, bail reform, the outlook for the formerly incarcerated, the effect of climate change on the Bronx, the state budget, and a whole lot more. So let's just get right to them. Please join me in welcoming the Assembly member from the 86th Assembly District. It is Assembly Member Yudelka Tapia. Nice to have you with us, Assembly Member. We had let's just tell people so they know who their representatives are and what neighborhoods they are. You guys can put that map up again. This includes the Bronx neighborhoods of University Heights, Morris Heights, Mount Eden, Kingsbridge, Tremont, and Fordham. And that is Assembly Member Tapia's district. And our other guest this evening is the Assembly Member from the 85th Assembly District, which includes the Bronx neighborhoods of Soundview, Classen Park, Harding Park, Castle Hill, Hunts Point, Rikers Island, and that is Assembly Member Kenny Burgos. Nice to have you with us, both Assembly members. Nice to see you. Assembly Member Tapia, we were just started talking before the program. Let's get into it. You and I have been on TV together, mostly with debates, and you have long sought to be an elected official. We had this conversation with Amanda Farias last week. Where are you at? You must be thrilled that your dream came true, and now you are an Assembly member. Tell me what it's been like for you.
Thank you, Gary, for bringing me back. Yes, it's been.
You earned it.
It's a dream come true, but it comes with the challenges and and the thing and the frustration that you think. That things are going to be easy because you already have the experience. You've been doing it for so many years, but it's not like that. It takes a learning curve, and it takes. In my case, it's been a little bit better because I have the relationship already with many of my colleagues before I was elected. But yes, it's a group of people that actually every time are trying to work and working hard to actually see how is actually that we're going to bring the resources to our community. And for many people, including me in the past, I would blame many elected officials for not doing what it is, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot of negotiation.
I have to tell you, that's pretty funny that you just blamed elected officials, and now you see. Well, maybe you could just define a little bit of what the frustration is. I'm sure because you have such passion for your community and you feel like you know what the answer is. You'd love to go like that and have it happen, but of course, Albany is a very big and complex place, and
yes.
You're only a freshman Assembly member. Talk to me about some of the frustrations. What is it that you'd like to move forward that you feel like hasn't fully happened, or you don't see
for
it
example
happening?
Yes, it's true. You have a little bit of frustration because you come asking for a thing, but it's, for example, we have now a crisis of with the electric bills and all the utilities with our communities. We have in the whole state 1.3 million homes that actually have arrears for 1.7 billion to 2.3 billions, and they are in the brink of being thin. And the governor didn't put not even a zero for that in the budget. So we're trying to fight for the $1 billion that minimum needed for our seniors in our low-income community to actually keep their electricity, especially during this winter that's been so really hard and tough. and that is frustrating when you see that. I mean, that we're going to have to continue pushing and fight stronger with the government, so we can actually bring secure those community in their apartments. So that's part of the frustration along with
you would, as I said, you'd love to go like that and say, all right, let's just get the money and let's get the funding, but you learn about what it is. But we'll ask you this question, then we'll follow up with Assembly Member Burgos. Let's just talk about rebounding from the pandemic. Healthcare has obviously become a larger focus than it ever was. Of course, it's the largest industry in the Bronx, and small businesses, many of them had to close, many of them had to reconfigure. It's very easy to say, put up partitions, in front of the cash register, but somebody's going to pay for that. So if we'll start with you, Assembly Member Tapia, and then we'll go to Assembly Member Burgos. What's it like in your district now, trying to rebound from the pandemic, and what do we need to do better, aside maybe from just funding?
I mean, I like to be a little bit positive. I've seen a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. But I mean, in my district, let me tell you, we have 30% of the small businesses, especially the restaurants, are closed. And they're closed for good. They're not going to open. And small businesses are the backbone of our communities. And in my communities, I mean, closing a restaurant means that they're going to be 10, 20, 30 people that has families, 10, 20, 30 families minimum that are actually losing their jobs. And it's going to be difficult, especially during this time, for people that's the line of work that they do, and not having those things open. But that's one thing. I mean, and then the jobs, and then the housing issues that this pandemic also has created, and the rent arrears that we haven't solved, that we are fighting. We're having money in the budget for that, but that's not going to end that. We have to stop getting this temporary solutions to issues that are being perennial in our communities and been going on for 100, 200 years.
So the idea of the eviction moratoriums, which, they keep extending it, and all those kinds of things are good. The light for you at the end of the tunnel is permanent solutions. Let's take a step back and do that. All right.
Yes, because I mean, we've been fighting for that forever. I mean, we need that.
Let's bring Assembly Member Burgos into it. So we'll ask you the same question in your area in I guess it's the Southeast Bronx, largely. Talk to me about the pandemic, how it's affected, and how what you need to do to rebound.
Yeah, well, I mean, much to what my colleague said, obviously with small businesses and just housing is a big issue in my district, but I think you alluded to a really important issue, Gary, that we have to address, and that's just healthcare, right? Obviously, healthcare was the focal point of this pandemic. Our healthcare workers work day in and day out. Part of the proposal is to offer a bonus to all of our state healthcare workers who have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic without a single day off. They couldn't work from home, but it stretches much further than that. My community is a lot of low to moderate income folks. We do not have a hospital here, but we're pushing in the state to increase funding to our safety net hospitals, our public hospitals, our community healthcare networks. We're working in the state right now to increase that Medicaid cap, that artificial cap that really does a disservice to a lot of people in the Bronx, and especially in my community. We're working to get, our home care workers a lot more money. They have been underpaid for decades. That is another kind of, I think, exposure that COVID really showed. I tell people often, one of the most shocking things that I saw during the pandemic was I would do these food distributions, and I would get a lot of my constituents to come out here, even seniors, which is a tragic thing to see. But even more tragic was they would come with their home healthcare aides, and their healthcare aides would ask if they could also take home a box of food because they were also in need while working. And there's just no reason to have anyone who's full-time working go hungry.
This week, there was, I think Mayor Adams talked specifically about Hunts Point and building up the food market and investing. Maybe that's what Assemblymember Tapia was just talking about, a permanent solution, investing hundreds of millions of dollars to renovate the food market at Hunts Point. It's always been shocking to me that we have the largest food market in the world, and yet we have such food insecurity. Since that is your district, Assemblyman Burgos, do you feel that is the kind of thing that can help address this very serious issue?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those, like you said, it's common sense. If people are hungry, we've got to invest and put the food on the table. The Bronx feeds New York. 75% of every single piece of produce that is sold in this city comes through that market, comes right here through the Hunts Point market in the Bronx. So it's just completely, unacceptable that we have people in the Bronx that are going without food. We can make these investments. The mayor announced yesterday $100 million, and I'm proud to stand by, and I'm happy to see that investment. And I look forward to a lot more there because, frankly, this has been a long, long time history of disinvestment in the Bronx. So I'm glad the mayor, the state legislature, and the governor are all looking to this borough for what it is. And it really is a cornerstone of the city and has to be invested in.
It is ironic. Healthcare is our largest industry, and yet we have the worst health notifications of any county in the state. And we have the biggest food market, and we have such food insecurity. It's like it doesn't seem to work. I want to change gears a little bit, Assemblyman, and let's talk about criminal justice and our corrections facilities. There's not enough time in the day to talk about the horrors at Rikers Island, but really the biggest controversy right now is over bail reform. The last go around, the state legislature passed bail reform. The mayor wants to give judges wider discretion on when to impose cash bail. This statistic is a difficult one to hear. In the first year New York's new bail policies took effect, nearly a fifth of all defendants were rearrested for a crime of some kind, and 2% of the total led to rearrest for a violent felony. You'll say, well, it's only 5%, 2%, but one person getting hit in the head with a brick over some lunatic who's been let back makes people say, you know what, you did the wrong thing. So on bail reform, Assemblyman, and then we'll let the Assemblymember Tapia weigh in as well. What do you think? Do we need to adjust those rules to give judges more discretion?
Yeah, thank you for that, Gary. And I think what you said at the end is absolutely right. Listen, none of us want to see crime increase. None of us want to see people assaulted, killed, hit by cars, gun violence. We stand vehemently against this stuff. But frankly, the old system of bail was criminalizing poverty. Frankly, that system basically said if you had enough money to not be in jail during your trial, then you don't have to go to jail. But if you were poor, you would rot and you would be forgotten about on Rikers Island for a year, 2 years, 3 years, where you would languish, and you would unfortunately have scenarios like Khalif Browder, who died as a cause of this. So those numbers are certainly something we're looking at. But frankly, if you're really looking at the overall scheme of what numbers were prior to bail reform has been a success. Right now, judges do have the discretion. This is a big misinformation. Judges have discretion. If someone is arrested for a violent felony, if someone is arrested for these kinds of crimes, the judge still has discretion to implement bail. What we're seeing a lot of, unfortunately, is these judges almost having a self-fulfilling prophecy where they want to see bail reform fail and are letting these folks out.
Oh.
They have the discretion to do so, but they choose not to use it.
That's a significant charge. I'm going to consider that. Assemblymember Tapia, one of the things that occurred to me, if you give judges more discretion, it potentially opens the door for the kind of profiling, if you will, that makes them say people of color will get the short end of the stick. And they'll, because it gives them the discretion to look at somebody and say, on the other hand, we hear people who are, recidivists, and that becomes a big problem as well. Assemblymember Tapia, your thoughts about bail reform?
Yes, I am in the same line of my colleague Kenny, but it's true. But we are not looking at what are the actual issues. They have the discretion. The judges have the discretion that they should have. Otherwise, we're going to continue criminalizing our young people. Our people with mental health. We're forgetting that the person that hit that woman, I am not putting it lightly, was because of mental health. The guy that killed the 2 police officers when they were doing their job was because of mental health. We are not going to the root of many of the issues that are getting to this violence that we have. And the other elephant in the room, like like Kenny put it, is guns. The trafficking of guns. Those are things that we have to be looking at when we are talking about bail reform. And yes, many people want that to fail so we can come back and continue criminalizing our young people and handicapping them for the future. And I think, that's something that I am tired of, because my district and the Hemick district is where we're seeing the most of those. And when you take one of these kids, from a corner, and they don't have, it's not a reason, a real reason, it's not being a violent crime, it doesn't be none like that, and you take them to Rikers Island and they don't have the $250 or the $500 that they need to get out, and then they spend months and years, when they come back, they are completely mentally handicapped. And that is what we're seeing over and over again, and I'm sick and tired of that.
Assemblymember Burgos, I do want to take a quick moment. Let's talk about people who are formerly incarcerated. This is obviously something that's central to your work. Talk to me. What are their issues as they transition back to society, and what do we need to do when we look at that population right now?
We can talk all morning and all afternoon about what the issues are there, Gary. But one way I've kind of encapsulated the state's policy with prisoners and when they're released, and incarcerated folks, is $40 in a bus ticket. That's what the state's policy is right now. You're going to be released from prison. Here's $40 in a bus ticket from, you may end up near the border of Canada. You have to make it all the way back to New York City. And that, frankly, is not putting someone on the path to a bright future. That is not putting someone back into society the way we all want to see. We want to see people rehabilitated. If you have served your time, if you have paid your debt to society, you should no longer be shackled along the way. So we have to talk about things like housing, things like jobs, which we always talk about, but some things as simple as getting a driver's license. You have people who come out of prison and the only form of identification is a prison ID. Now, you tell me a job isn't going to discriminate against you if you apply for this job and the only form of identification is your prison ID. You have no enrollment in healthcare. You have no enrollment in social services if needed. So we have to work months prior to work with these incarcerated folks to make sure that when they are released, they're already on a path to success. They're already 10 steps ahead of the game, because otherwise the burden then falls on us. It falls on the taxpayers. And I talk with my neighbors all the time that we may have disagreements on these issues, but I tell them this is an issue you have to be invested in. If you want crime to go down, if you want a more sustainable city, then we have to talk about how we reinvest and how we rehabilitate people who are coming out of prison and back on our streets. You have to make the investment.
And I know you have a bill for
Yes.
making it available, making public housing available. It seems a very fundamental thing. Where they're going to live, and trying to apply for a mortgage. Forget about that. You got to get them into an apartment so they can begin to be stable.
Yep.
I do want to move on because we'll run out of time real quick. Assemblymember Tapia, let's talk about the budget. You've already brought it up. The governor put out a record-setting $216 billion budget plan, including $2 billion in pandemic recovery initiatives, $2.2 billion in property tax rebates, other spending increases on education and healthcare. Is there concern that a lot of this kind of new largesse that they're all thrilled about is based on the one-time payment from the infrastructure bills, and that once that money dries up and you're not going to get another payment for that likely soon, that some of these things will have to be dialed back? Talk to me about the governor's budget and what you think about it.
Well, I think, yes, we are very, excited with that we have a better budget that the state ever had before. But that doesn't mean that we are not letting many things behind. Like I said before, the governor has forgotten many critical things in the budget. But overall, the 2 billion that you're talking about is not going to be enough for us to get people on their feet. To get out of this pandemic. I still have 30% of people in my district that are, looking for food. I still have 25% of people that don't have enough health care and that have mental issues, and there is not enough money in the budget for that. Because our communities are being, for hundreds of years, disinvested to the top. But I think, yes, we have pretty good, some wins in the budget. We're going to have some wins. We don't know. We are still collaborating. We're going to have most likely $500 to pay to help with the electricity, but we need a minimum of $1 billion. We're going to have money to have education the incarcerated people that my colleague was talking about. But we had to discuss that also. We don't have that. Those are discussions that we have that we wish that the governor could actually work with. We're going to raise this. We want to raise the salary of the home workers, healthcare workers, because I mean they are in the low end of the thing, but they are so important. But I mean all of those discussions are in the table. But I mean all of us are in agreement for that, and the governor's going to have to. I'm going to have to push the governor in many of those terms. But I mean it's a better way, better budget than it was before. $260 billion is a lot of money. But I mean if you calculate how much money made all these billionaires from theirs, that's nothing.
What I'm hearing from both of you is what I've heard, of course, for years from working in the Bronx and covering the Bronx and sitting in this seat for decades. Literally, there are populations in the Bronx that nobody knows who they are and what their needs are. It's like we're still undiscovered. And so all of these issues, which we hear over and over again, and Assemblymember Tapia talked about permanent solutions, it would be nice to take a step back and really do permanent solutions. Listen, we're all happy about the budget and the funding available. Assemblymember Burgos, your thoughts about the governor's budget? What would you like to see? What are you going to push back on? What do you like? I mean, give us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I will give the governor credit. This is my second budget, and the governor has put forth a strikingly much better budget than her predecessor. She's truly working with the legislature, and it's a big number. Right. But as we've been saying, I mean, New York is the biggest state when it comes to inequities. We have a state with some of the richest zip codes in the nation, and yet we hold the poorest congressional district in the nation. So if we're going to truly balance these scales, we have to make these investments. I mean, this is just simply put, like you said, we have communities that have been in the shadows for decades. So in this budget, I'm pushing to make sure that we uplift those communities. We mentioned the healthcare workers. I think the governor put forth the $3,000 bonus. I think that's great, but that's really not going to work on the retention issue we're having. That's really not going to do anything for them in the next year. Frankly, it'll be a pay cut if they get a $3,000 bonus now and nothing later. So I think we have to work on really increasing these salaries. Like I said, with the home care workers, work on a really structured program where we can increase their salaries, work with cost of living adjustment. I mean, gas prices are up, groceries are up, and Bronxites are feeling it. So a $3,000 bonus is great, but an increase in your salary is much, much better. And that goes across the board for many issues. Last year, we did the Excluded Workers Fund, which I was very proud to be a sponsor of. And many of our excluded folks, undocumented immigrants who got nothing during the pandemic, were helped, but many were left out. So what do we do now going forward? We have to talk about making our excluded folks excluded no more, right? Making sure they're actually included in these social safety nets going forward because they pay into it. It's very, it's not understood that these excluded workers are paying into unemployment insurance. They're paying into the state income tax. They're paying into workers' comp.
So what you're saying is they're paying into it, but they don't get the return that they ought to get. I want to bring up a different topic that we've all heard about, but I have not heard real hardcore discussion on what the implications will be for our neighborhoods, good, bad, and different. Assemblymember Burgos, will start with you, and that is the notion of the legalization of marijuana. It was raised this week. The governor talked about the first licenses to be able to sell legal marijuana going to go to people who had been arrested. I thought that was an interesting twist. I hadn't thought about that. What is your anticipation about what is going to work with this? Is it going to raise money that can be useful? Listen, you're going to have more people walking around smoking pot. I mean, is that going to be a difficult thing for your district? So we'll start with you, and then Assemblymember Tapia, same question. So what do you think? What is your anticipation, and what are you working on as marijuana becomes available in the borough of the Bronx?
Yeah. So, when marijuana was legalized just about a year ago, and I think what we've now realized in this year that the sky hasn't fallen, right? There were a lot of cries and fears that legalizing marijuana would just be the destruction of our communities. And what it's done is actually make sure we're not putting people of color, over police communities in jails for, frankly, something that we have proven does not cause a violent street, does not cause harm in the communities. So we've made sure people are staying in their homes, and marijuana has been safe overall. Now, with this retail application coming online, I commend the governor, I commend OCM on making sure people who have been affected by this the most in the war on drugs get first priority. New York State is going to have and already has the best marijuana legalization program in the nation, bar none. And that's what we have to strive to continue doing. We have to make sure that it's not mega corporations, it's not deep pocket individuals that reap the benefits of this. You have some states where licenses have not been granted to a single person of color. And when you look at the stats that people of color have been affected by this over the decades, it's unacceptable. So we have to
are there economic benefits in the long run? Do you see the tax benefits and those kinds of things?
Absolutely, Gary. I mean, you wouldn't have some of these investors salivating at the thought of this application opening up. There are billions of dollars to be grabbed in tax revenue for the state. So it's a two-way street. It works for our communities of color and it works for the state in terms of tax revenue.
Assemblymember Tapia, your thoughts? And are you concerned about your district, or do you think this will be, just another avenue of commerce that will help?
Let me tell you, I mean, a complaint that I have, I mean, from my constituents, when it was actually started, I mean, was enacted, the legalization of marijuana was, I mean, the people were scared that was going to, but nothing has happened. The only thing that happened is that our young people hasn't been criminalized because of smoking marijuana, because of doing that, things that have been done forever. For everybody, not only our community of colors, but we were the ones that were more targeted in that, and our kids were being handicapped because of that. We put for the criminal charges that they wouldn't be able to erase. I'm so happy that we were able to clean those things and for these young people, and they can come back. And I also, it is just justice. It's just justice that they can benefit from the marijuana, billions of dollars that it's going to create. Because they were the one that were handicapped in the first place.
We're going to run out of time. Are you interested in seeing stores selling it in your community? Do you think it'll be good for families and create commerce?
I think so. I don't think, I mean, why not? I mean, it's going to be a business, and if it is a business, everybody has to make money. And the people in this case that had to make the money are the people that are being more affected by it. And those are our Black and brown people. And I have one of the poorest districts in the state of New York, and maybe in the country. So I think, I mean, that many young people that were handicapped before are going to now be able to, that they're not young anymore.
We're almost out of time. Assemblymember Tapia, a quick question, a prediction. Is the New York Health Act going to pass this time around, or is it, because what we're hearing is
I think so. I think so.
Well, I realize the Assembly will probably go quickly. So that's one thought. We're going to go with quick questions. Assemblymember Burgos, your thoughts on the New York Health Act? I know that you're for it, but do you think it'll pass?
Listen, the New York Health Act has some of the most co-sponsors in any bill in the state assembly right now, so I'm hopeful that we can pass it. You have a lot of New Yorkers that do not have health care right now, and federal government isn't going to step up, so the state has to step up and pass it.
Yes or no, we've got to ask you, you're going to run for Senate?
Me?
Your name has been thrown. Okay.
And
one quick question for each of you. Assemblymember Burgos, supporting Governor Hochul for re-election?
Yes, I've endorsed Governor Hochul. I think she's done a great job.
Assemblymember Tapia?
Yes, I'm supporting Governor Hochul for re-election too.
Hey, you guys are great. It is thrilling to have you on here talking the real talk about the Bronx. And so, Assemblymember Yudelka Tapia, thank you so much. Assemblymember Kenny Burgos, thank you. And guess what? We'll be back next week for more. Thanks to our producers, Stephen Powell and Rebecca Hemick. And next week, more Bronx Talk.